Hey there everybody, my name is Ben and today we're going to be talking about objects and classes. The syntax I'm going to be using is primarily Java, but this can be used for most every other object-oriented programming language there is, so let's get right into it. So object-oriented programming is a concept that some programming languages follow that aims to group together data and related functions into entities called objects. So what does that mean? That means that the objects created in our programs are made in a way to reflect the states and behaviors of real-world objects. So the states that I mentioned are properties that the object possesses, and these are represented as variables in the object's class. And behaviors are actions that the object can perform, and they are represented as methods that the object's class defines. So objects in object-oriented programming are instances of a class, and so with that being said, we'll need to really define what a class is. Classes are blueprints that we model our objects off of that define the states and behaviors we expect those objects of that class to have. So let's look at a few examples. We'll write a class called dog that describes what we think a dog might look like. So in our class, we'll define that all dogs have a name and are described by a breed, and those are represented here as string variables that the class has. We'll also say in our class that the dog has the ability to bark, and so that is described here as a method called bark. So the objects here are instances of the class that we've created called dog. So here we have a dog object here named Aaron with the breed of German Shepherd, and it knows the method that we defined in our class called bark. We'll now add another object of the dog class. This time it's a dog named Danny of the breed Labradoodle, and that also has the behavior defined for how to bark, as we see here in the dog class. So to reiterate, let's go over the members of classes and objects. So first we have the states, which are represented by variables defined in the class. We also have the behaviors, which are defined by the functions found in the class. So the states represent fields of the object, and the behaviors are represented as methods of the object. And so these together are the members of classes and objects in object-oriented programming. So another thing we're going to need to know about object-oriented programming in classes is the idea of constructors. So the constructor is a special type of method that gives instructions on how to initialize an object. So the constructor being that special method that creates objects, it shares the same name as the class. That being said, it should be noted that objects are created when the constructor is called, and the constructor returns a reference to the object that had just been created. In a lot of cases, this will mostly be where you initialize the data for your fields on your objects. So we will touch on this in the coding example coming up next, but when creating an object in Java, there are three main steps. That is the declaration, instantiation, and the initialization. So the declaration involves making a variable of the class type. The instantiation is using the new keyword in Java, and the initialization is calling the constructor. So first up in our example, we have the declaration. That simply means making a variable of the class type. In this case, we have dog as our class with a capital D, and we call the variable dog1 just for simplicity, but you could really call it anything you'd like it to be. Next up, we have instantiation, which is using the new keyword, and so that's simply using the equal sign and the new keyword in Java as seen below. And finally, we have initialization. So that's calling the constructor and any parameters that is defined in the class. So in our case, we have dog, capital D, as the class is called. And we have two strings, one containing the word name and another containing the word breed. And those are the parameters of our constructor. So now we'll move on next to our coding example, and we'll see you over there. You're now over here in Eclipse to do this coding example here. So I'm starting from the very beginning. Again, this is the Eclipse IDE if you want to download that and try it out. So first, I'm going to go up here to File, New, Java Project. And what you name it here, it doesn't really matter. It can be anything you want it to be. I'm going to name mine Object Class Tutorial. And you can go ahead and click Finish. Okay, now we're going to right-click on that, go to New, and we're going to go to Package. So here we are. You can call this whatever you'd like as well. I'm just going to call it the same thing as the project itself, but in lowercase. So Object Class Tutorial. You can click Finish on that. There's a lot of setup here at the very beginning, but it'll be worth it. So we're going to right-click on that package we just created here on the left side of the screen. Go to New, Class, and so we're going to name our class. I'm going to call the first one Main. What's important here is that we go down here on the check boxes here, and we click public static void main. That will get us set up. I called mine main because that's where the main method's going to be in our program. Finish. Okay, one more class and then we can get moving here. So new, go to class, and we're going to call this one dog based on our example we did previously. And we're not going to click the checkbox down here for the main method, and we're going to click finish. over here in the dog class, this is going to be our blueprint for what we want our dog objects to look like. So first, let's start with the variables. Like we had in the example before, first we're going to use the access modifier private on the variables. That's not too important right now, but we'll go ahead and go with it. It's of type string, and we had the variable name, and we had another one also of type string called breed. So these right here are considered members of the class. They are variables, so they are known as fields of this class. That being said, let's model our behaviors of this class. So let's say that our access modifier here is public. Again, that's not incredibly important right now, just go with it. And we'll have it return void, like we did in our example. And the method that we had that models our behavior is called bark. And so let's write some code for this method. So when we call this method, let's have it print out just simply the string bark bark. Perfect. So right now we don't have our constructor yet, so let's go ahead and add that in. So to build our constructor, it's going to be a public. We're going to call it the same name as the class. We'll give it the parameter list. So we could leave this blank, or in most cases you're going to want to initialize your variables. So in this case we want to include strings to initialize these fields up here. So we'll have a string called name and another string called breed. Most of the time in your constructor it'll look something like this. We'll call this. The this keyword is mostly used when the names of our parameters are the same as the fields, and so the this keyword clarifies any ambiguity between the two. So this.name refers to the field up here, and we're going to set it equal to name, which is the parameter up here. And we also do the same for the breed. So this.breed equals breed. This, referring to the object being created, breed, which is the field up here, is equal to breed, the parameter passed in. And just to make this stand out in our example, we're going to include a print statement. So system.out@println, we're going to say a new dog object has been created. So whenever we call our constructor and the object is created, that will print out. And just to further prove the point and make sure that we know each created object is individual, we'll do this. We'll do another print line. This dog is named, space, and then we'll do a plus, and we can include the variable or the field of this class. So this.name. And again, this is referring to the object we're creating. Name is the field up here. And we'll do the same down here to represent our breed of our dog. So there we go. We've created our bark method, and we have our constructor, our special method that creates the object, and we also declared up here our fields. So let's go back over to main. You can click main up here on the top bar, or you can click it over here on the side. I'll get rid of this. And so now let's create a dog object. The steps used to create an object are declaration, so it's of type dog, which is the name of the class, dog1, which is just, we can call it whatever we want, but dog1 will be simple enough for now. We need to instantiate with the new keyword, and then we need to call the constructor. So dog, and we need to include the parameters. So in our example, we had the dog's name was Aaron, so we include a string with the dog's name in it. And we also include the dog's breed, so we include a string with the dog's breed in it. So now that we've created that, we can actually see some printing if we run it. So we run it by going up to the green arrow up here. And if there's no errors in your code, it should print out what we said the constructor should do. So the constructor ran, said a new dog object has been created. This dog is named Aaron. Aaron is of breed German Shepherd. Perfect. So now we've created our dog1 object. We'll call dog1. We'll use the dot operator to access the members of dog1, or at least what's available to us. And we'll call bark. Cool. And now, if we run the program again, because there's no errors, we will see the same stuff from the constructor, and we also see bark bark. Perfect. Just to illustrate, I'm going to add a divider in our print. So this is just going to be a divider to show the difference between our objects here. We'll make another object, dog2. Again, the name doesn't matter, but I'm going to call it dog2 for simplicity. We'll call the dog constructor, and we'll call this one Dan. And he is a Labradoodle. So what we did here is we declaration dog object called dog2. We instantiated using the new keyword, and we initialized using the dog constructor. So if we run this again, so we see up here a new dog object has been created. That one was Aaron. We see our divider that we have using the print line here. And then we also see dog2 be created as an object with the printout saying now the dog's name is Dan, and Dan is a Labradoodle. And Dan can also bark. We just call dog2.bark, and we run our program again. And we see here Dan is a breed Labradoodle, bark bark. Dope. So let's go back to dog. Now let's just add a little bit more to our bark method. We're going to add a little bit more to our bark method. We'll say before the string this.name, and we'll concatenate with the plus and say is speaking, bark bark. So now we go back to our main and we run it again. We see new dog object has been created. This dog is named Aaron. Aaron is of the breed German Shepherd. Aaron is speaking, bark bark. Just fix that little typo there. Make sure that there's a space before it is speaking. That way it looks evenly spaced in our output. Then there you go. We've now created a class, made objects, and called methods on those objects. If you have any questions, leave them down below, and leave a like on this video if you enjoyed, and have a good one.